evening and welcome to the Dope Show. I'm your host, Kiana Hughes, and DOPE stands for Developing Opportunities for Personal Empowerment. Here at the Dope Show, we do that through education and information about the cannabis industry, the cannabis plant, and just cannabis all around for health and wellness. Today, we're going to be bringing a couple guests to you. We're going to be talking to Mr. Abraham, I hope I say this right, Villegas, who is a medical cannabis industry analyst and the founder of the Illinois Medical Cannabis Community on Facebook. He's going to be talking to us about an article that came out recently regarding the Illinois Medical Cannabis Program. And then we'll also be doing a caregiver spotlight with Ms. Nicole Boisseau, and she's going to be talking to us about her journey as a mother who is a caregiver for her daughter and who has made the decision to medicate her with cannabis, and just talk to us a little bit about that particular. So, just a couple brief things here. And what's dope this week, something I thought was kind of interesting. The words dabbing, kush, and 420 were added to the dictionary.com website database. As we know, every year they add some fun words to the database to make sure that it stays up to date and current with the latest words and to match the culture. So it's an interesting note to the influence of cannabis on pop culture as it stands right now. It seems that we do have our guest on the phone now, so I am not going to delay any further. The reason why I wanted to speak to our guest that we have on the phone today is because he was featured in an article on Extract, which is the Chicago Sun-Times. It's their cannabis digital, I guess you could call it their cannabis digital paper. And there was an article that came out this week that said that for the second year in a row, the Illinois medical cannabis or medical marijuana pilot program actually got the top score in an assessment done by Americans for Safe Access. So our program here in Illinois got the highest score out of all of the states that have programs in the country. And so it was quoted, there was a couple quotes in there by Mr. Villegas. So good to talk to you today. And thank you for joining us.
Absolutely, thank you for having me.
Yeah, and I just had to reach out to you because I thought, well, first of all, I thought it was really cool that somebody that I don't know personally, but I do know you and recognize your name from the Facebook group. So I thought, oh, this would be a cool way to really reach out and have someone who can really give us the nitty gritty on this article. You were featured in the article. I happen to know that you're very knowledgeable about the industry here in Illinois, and I'm really honored to have you. So thank you again for coming on with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity.
So before we get into the article, I know I found you through the Illinois Medical Cannabis Community on Facebook, the Facebook group there. Can you tell our audience a little bit about that Facebook group and, how did you get started? What was the purpose of the group and so on?
So this all started around July 2 years ago. Someone else was already posting on a smaller scale, and then the group they had about 300 members. And right around that time, I had actually just recently transitioned into the cannabis marketing industry. So I reached out to that person to offer my help and assistance to grow the group, and we were able to expand the audience for that group to about 3,000 members up until February, when Facebook swept many pages, and our page was caught in that mix. And so we had to start over. And in starting over in February 12th of 2016, the group with a brand and a logo, and that's where we founded the Illinois Medical Cannabis Community. And ever since then, we've started growing much faster, and we're starting to reach thousands of people where when we first began, we were only reaching in the small hundreds. So we've definitely come a long way in a very short time. but we wouldn't have been able to get there without the help of all of the people who contribute to that community on a daily basis.
Yes. Is an absolute just treasure trove of information. I love the there's a lot of support and a lot of camaraderie amongst the patients. You have people who are new to the program, people who are, still waiting for their cards to come, and, a lot of different types of people that have been in the program or have been using. And so it's kind of like the elders, so to speak, or the veterans help out the newbies. And it's such a supportive, it's just a really good Facebook group. So I think, what you guys have done there. And who are I'm sorry, give a shout out to your other administrators, because I don't want to forget them in the mix too.
Absolutely. So first to start off, we have Joel Erickson, who's the other administrator group together. And then we have Sandy Champion, who is actually really prominent in the legislative part of the bill. Her and her husband, Jim Champion, actually helped get this bill passed in the first place. And so the next person who comes after that is Kirsten Velasco, and she's a really strong advocate for the program. She's a boots on the ground kind of person, and she's constantly educating people all over the state through educational events. And then we also have Nathan Venturini down in central Illinois, and he's basically our numbers guy who helps us crunch a lot of the statistics and data to help get a better interpretation of what's actually going on. And so between us five, we basically spread out our duties to help the group actually run a lot smoother. And so we assign tasks to different people to help us navigate this group in an efficient manner.
And what do you credit the growth of the group to? Like, why there has been, a really big boom. There's people that are joining and getting on every day. What do you credit that growth to?
Honestly, most of it has been word of mouth. We tried to make the best value of the community, the content that we were publishing, and everything that we've posted since starting the group. We've always made sure that going out in these groups is helpful, relevant, and timely for our community. And so as we've continued to push out all of this news, more patients are starting to talk about our groups, and dispensaries are starting to push patients toward our groups. And so having that conversation take place offline has really helped us build this brand from one person to the next.
Nice. I know that, I know recently the decision was made, we kind of collectively, to close the group. Why do you think it's important to have it closed versus kind of a public forum?
That's something that we discussed for quite a long time, actually. We always felt that the benefit of having a public group allowed us to reach far more individuals than what we would have been able to reach if we were to close the group early on. And so having that exposure from the beginning really allowed us to reach a lot of people who would have never otherwise come. That we're closing in on 6,000 members. Many of these same people who have joined our group, for the most part, have only lurked within the community. Many of them have not actually engaged or introduced themselves prior to the group being closed. Sure. Because they have employers, they have family members, they have friends, people in their lives and networks who wouldn't necessarily be accepting of the fact that they're associated with the medical marijuana group. And so in closing that, a lot of people have started to feel more comfortable coming out of their shell, if you will, by introducing themselves, telling us their story, and really what inspired them to begin engaging in the group and actually start advocating for the program. So we've seen a significant impact in closing the group, and ever since, we see more people coming in every day telling us about who they are and what they're going through, and it's been a very enlightening experience.
Are you still accepting members to the group?
Yeah.
Okay, good. And I really wanted to bring that up because I want people to know and understand that there are safe places online. There are places where there's plenty of information and education, and really the boots on the ground, the people who are in the trenches, the patients, the caregivers, these are the people that you really want to learn from. So having access to just to even be a part of those kind of conversations is really important. So I just wanted to make sure I gave that shout out to the Illinois medical cannabis community on Facebook, and to just thank you guys for what you're doing there, because I will say that you all do a great job at moderating the discussions, at keeping things classy and respectful, and just really keeping it a safe space. So I appreciate what you all do in that regard as well.
Well, thank you so much for the kind words. I can tell you from all of us, we definitely appreciate you giving us the opportunity to make our voices heard.
Oh, nice. Well, so let's get into this article, because when I saw those headlines, I thought, wow, well, does everybody feel that way? I mean, tell us a little bit about the assessment, who sponsored it and what it was about. Just what do you know about that, just in terms of the background of the assessment?
So the assessment was actually conducted by the Americans for Safe Access, and they're a really large group of advocates, as well as their lobbyist group, who works with many of these organizations to help get some of the legislation passed across the country. And so the actual report that they did was really in depth. There was a lot of qualitative information, and they definitely spent a lot of time researching the state to understand the laws and how they're actually practiced within their states. But it definitely caught my attention as well when I noticed that they ranked Illinois #1 and put it above states such as Michigan and California.
Yeah. And so I noticed that, we were pretty close. I mean, Illinois was in first place with the 89.8%. We were right above Michigan, so our neighbors to the north, with 88.75%, and California at 87%. What do you think? What do you think makes them think Illinois has the best program, or how did we score so high on that assessment?
I think it really comes down to the regulation of the program. On paper, the state looks far better than many other states when the medical cannabis programs are compared. But in practice, there's a lot of things that are left out in consideration for the program that doesn't necessarily work the way the law intends. And therefore, in Illinois specifically, has created a lot of barriers for patients who are unable to get access into the program.
Talk to me about some of those barriers.
Sure. So one of the first and strongest barriers in the program that exists are the fingerprint requirements for patients. In no other state are patients required fingerprints in order to apply or qualify for their state's medical cannabis pilot programs. Right.
And that is a cost as well as an inconvenience. I mean, you have to pay for the fingerprints.
Absolutely. And on top of that, the fingerprints are only good for 30 days.
Right.
So if the patient doesn't coordinate their fingerprints with their doctor's certification, they'll end up needing new fingerprints to submit with their application.
Right. And they expire, then you have to pay that particular bill again. How do we rate in terms of, well, I guess I shouldn't ask you like you actually did the program itself, but I always wonder, because it seems like in other states like a Michigan or even in Denver, although they're recreational as well, so I guess it's a little bit different. But it seems like it's so easy to get a card in other states, and here in Illinois, and it seems like it's cheaper. The registration is cheaper. It's just not as many barriers. There's more conditions added. What would you say that we can do as residents here in Illinois? What should we be supporting or looking for? What are some I know there's a lot of buzz about, full legalization and recreational use, but what are some more realistic kind of things that you think we could do or support to really kind of open this program up and make it more user-friendly?
I think the easiest way to get started is with more education. In Illinois specifically, we find that the demographics that we're dealing with have much less knowledge in regards to medical marijuana than most other states in the country. And so when we're coming to Illinois and approaching these people who are potential patients that might qualify for the program, a lot of them don't necessarily even understand that cannabis is marijuana or weed or pot or any of the other names that are used to describe the substance. And so when we come into the program and we're trying to sign people up and explain to them the endocannabinoid system and terpenes and all of these other complicated terms, they're still in the very first step where they're barely finding out that the program is available in their state, that they qualify, and that this might be something that can actually help them find relief. And so we have to take a step back and realize that the industry is moving a lot slower in this state than it is in many other states. And while that puts us behind everybody else in terms of general knowledge and education, there's also really great opportunity to properly educate people from the get-go and inform them on all of the information that other states didn't have when their medical cannabis pilot programs first started.
Absolutely. And I think that's why, I know that's why I do what I do, and that's why you do what you do. It's so important to get the information out there, to get everyone educated. I'm still, just this weekend, actually, I spoke to someone who still didn't know that medical cannabis was legal in Illinois, that it was actually a thing that you could get and you can do, and it's legal. Not for everyone, but obviously on the medical side of things. So whereas if you're in the industry, even as small as our market is here, you feel like, oh, well, people know this, but then you realize, no, people don't know. They don't know nearly as much as you think they do. And there's a lot of misconceptions about the programs, about the plant itself. So definitely that education and information piece is really important. I'll definitely say that. Is there anything in particular that I know we mentioned that regulation was one of the reasons why on paper it looked really good, the program looked really good. What are some things that you like about the program as you've seen, maybe compared to other programs that you know about? Some likes and some dislikes with that, in that regard.
Sure. I mean, outside of the fingerprint requirements and the background checks and a few other details about the program, it does actually have one of the better structures when we look at the regulations and how it was set up from the beginning. So if we were to actually remove a few of the barriers that currently exist in Illinois, I would agree that our state does in fact have better medical cannabis programs than other states that are even near us. For example, in New York, cannabis patients are not allowed to consume products that are dry flower. And that is the case in many other medical cannabis states. And I think that Illinois did a really great job of allowing the patients to consume dry flower products as well as other varieties that exist, which really gives an option to try and explore different methods of administration that might work better for one that doesn't necessarily always work for another.
So and just to clarify for our audience, when you say dry flower, so that's the bud, the weed that everyone is used to, that you generally smoke or vape, versus in a state like New York, then they're just working with the concentrates or the oils or the edibles. Is that accurate?
Precisely. The dry flower is the dry material that one essentially grinds and either smokes it through combustion or vaporization. Whereas in New York, the non-smokable forms include vapors, tinctures, patches, capsules, and other pharmaceutical-like methods of administration.
Okay. Well, great. Well, Abe, I want to, again, thank you for joining us today, for calling in. You and I have definitely got to talk offline, because I'd love to get you in the studio so we can talk about some other issues that we're facing here in Illinois and throughout the industry as it relates to the cannabis industry and some of our social concerns. So I would love to schedule some time for you to come into the studio and talk with me, and we can just kind of have chop it up and have some dialogue about a couple different things. But I really appreciate you coming or not coming, excuse me, calling in today and kind of clearing some of these things up for us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me and allowing me the opportunity to give my 2 cents on the program and helping you educate others. I appreciate it.
Okay, thanks a lot. You take care, Abe.
As well, you too. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll be back with Miss Nicole Boisseau, and she is our patient spotlight this week. So stay tuned. You're listening to The Dope Show on Intellectual Radio, Mondays at 8 o'clock p.m. We'll be right back. And we're back. Welcome back to The Dope Show. We're developing opportunities for personal empowerment here for the cannabis industry and the cannabis market. Today, for our caregiver spotlight, I have a dear friend and colleague, Ms. Nicole Boisseau. She is, I'm going to just say it, when you call Nicole's voicemail, if you get the voicemail, her voicemail is like, I am either healing, teaching children, feeding the homeless, studying the Bible, and learning how to be a better person all around. Like, she just makes you feel like, I'm always like, dang, I'll call you back. Like, I didn't want nothing. I got to go do some stuff with my life too. But thank you for joining me, Nicole. I brought Nicole here with us today so she can talk to us about her journey as a caregiver for her daughter and just all of the cool and interesting stuff she's doing. So thank you for coming.
And thank you for having me.
Yes. Thank you for taking time out. Okay. I kid, but I'm serious. Nicole is she homeschools, right?
Yes.
How many children?
I'm homeschooling 4.
Okay.
4 of my children. I'm 7, but I'm homeschooling 4.
Yes, she is homeschooling for her 4 kids. She's got, well, tell us, you have 2 sets of kids. You should probably clear this up, right?
Yes, I call them my 2 sets. Because my first set, I have a set of 3. They're adults now.
Yes.
Of that first set, the first, like my very first, were multiple birth, which was the twins.
Okay.
And which we'll discuss.
Yes.
One of the twins. Mm-hmm. And then my next set, 11 years later, was 4 stair steps.
Yes.
So I'm homeschooling the 4 boys. Yes.
Wow. And they are very well mannered and very intelligent, and you must be exhausted.
Yes.
So thank you for joining us. So you mentioned the twins. So give us what should we call twins first?
Okay, Nicole and Janae.
Okay.
And so you'll hear me call Nicole sister.
Yes.
Because
sister.
That's what we call her. Sister.
Sister.
Yeah.
And I wanted to make that clear too, because if we're gonna call her Nicole and be all brand new, then people are gonna get confused. Like
exactly.
Nicole. So tell us a little bit about sister and just the beginning of things. Just kind of paint the picture for us for how you got from there to here. Just the beginning part.
Okay. Well, sister. Well, there were multiple births and a very high risk pregnancy because of, first I was a young mother, so very young mother. So that was high risk in itself. And the fact that they were twins. Mm-hmm. So they were born premature. Sister was actually doing better. The 2. It was Janae that was risky.
Oh.
They very risky to the point where, the doctors were telling us, well, the second twin may not make it. But, of course, how we do.
So Janae's the youngest.
Yes, Janae is the youngest of the twins. So, you round up the church mothers and things like that, and you get to praying. And they started to do a lot better. We spent a lot of time in the hospital with them. You know, they stayed there for maybe half months afterwards. So sister or Nicole, she came home first. They came home a little later, but they both made it home. Well, we started seeing the difference in their development because Janae started doing things, you know, the things that you notice for babies. They're noticing their hands and things like that. And sister wasn't doing that. So it was like, okay, it's always one twin that's a little bit slower in development than the other. But, you know, you get around to about 12 months, 15 months, and you're like, okay, well, Janae is now walking.
Right. Big differences.
Sister's not, you know, so we took her in, took both of them in actually to get testing, things like that. And we were given not so much of a diagnosis. There was an early intervention program that someone that we knew that worked there, and they referred us. So we went there and said, okay, well, these signs, there's cerebral palsy like.
Okay.
So that's what we had. We were able to schedule a doctor's appointment, of course, and that's when she received the diagnosis. So you know, so pretty much from there, it was the therapies, you know, those regular things like that, and
with
you know, just kind of with two babies, because
babies.
Of course we felt like, okay, so I mean, they're twins, so we're taking one, we're going to take the other two, sure, just in case, because you just never know. Yeah,
absolutely. So, and to well, I don't know if you said you were a young mother. Can you just be clear to our audience how old you were having to go through this?
I was 13 years old when I became a mother to twins.
And so 13 then, and 14 having to, like, when she got the diagnosis and having to navigate all of that. So what were her treatments like then? And what was her, you know, what were things like then? What was she taking? What were things going on?
Okay, well, when we got the diagnosis, I was about 14, 14 years old, and we went to Schwab Rehabilitation Hospital in the city on the west side, and she was an inpatient there. So she did really well. She did well. When we got the diagnosis from the doctor, that she pretty much said, well, hey, she's spastic quadriplegic, cerebral palsy, because there's different levels of cerebral palsy. You have Bell's palsy, you have there's Bell's palsy, there's spastic quadriplegic. There's another where there's just like one limb, of the leg. I forgot which one that is, but quadriplegic is when all four limbs are affected.
Okay.
So it's a possibility that, a person that's diagnosed with that may never walk or fully or have full use of their arms. So like, oh, okay. But of course, as a 14-year-old with twins, and I'm developing as well, and overwhelmed with everything, you just, there's nothing that you question,
right?
Because the doctor is the authority.
Yeah.
Especially at that age, the doctor is the authority. You're not asking questions.
Yeah.
Right.
So tell me, when did you start questioning the authority, though?
I began to question the authority when I was about 20. Okay. 21-ish, 22, something around there. Well, by that time she had surgeries. She had a hip surgery. She had two hip surgeries. And she started developing a curvature in her back, scoliosis.
Okay.
Then there was another surgery that was scheduled for her to help with the curvature. And going through a surgery with your child, your baby, pretty much, it's very, very tough. Very tough. We're in the hospital and she's in pain and
You can't do
crying, and
anything.
there's nothing, nothing that you can pretty much do. So I said, no, no more surgeries. Is there something else that we could do? And she started developing a muscle tightness, in which she didn't have that before. She didn't have that tightness, the tightening of the muscles like that before. So she was the doctor prescribed Valium for her.
Okay.
And so now we're getting into the drugs, because she never had them before. And
Valium is nerve. That's nerve pills, right? That's nerve. It's not a muscle relaxer, is it?
That's what I was told.
Okay.
That muscle relaxant, and most of the children that I knew, in our circle, they were given Valium, and I would see them on the bus, when they would pick up Nicole, and they're just on the bus kind of spaced out, like, And Nicole wasn't like that, or sister wasn't like that, because, she wasn't on anything. And so she was more alert. She was more,
she's so happy. Has she always been that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, like, she brightens my day. Like, I don't have a bad day, because I'm looking at her, and I'm looking like, wow, if you can
you gotta
be like this, then it's like, hey, I'm gonna suck it up and do it, So
so how'd you get to the the Valium, right? Keep going. So the Valium, and you say, okay, hold on.
Yeah, I'm just like, well, I remember the DARE program, so it was pretty much good for something.
Shout out to the DARE program.
Right. Shout out to the DARE program. So I asked the question. I said, well, able to function with or without it? Will she become addicted to it? And that's when I started questioning the authority. And it was like, well, you may have to wean her. Well, wean was a buzzword for me.
For addiction.
Yeah, for addiction. And I said,
or dependence.
Yeah, dependency. And I don't smoke. At that particular time, I did.
Okay.
I partook in. I partook.
You were familiar.
I was familiar. At that time. So I'm thinking, well, I could. Like if I wanted to give her something to relax her, and I would do that. Maybe I would give her a shot or something like that. But
you mean like a shotgun?
Yeah.
Not a shot of liquor.
No, not a shot of liquor.
A shot of smoke.
Like a shot of smoke.
Okay. Just
course, I didn't do that, but I thought about that. So, you really have to be careful as a parent, and especially, a young parent, but you have to be careful as a parent, especially at that time, because, now you're talking about people
child
that may want to come in and child welfare that wants to come in and take your child because you're not doing
right. You're not keeping up with the medication.
Yeah, keeping up with the medication. Sure. So what I did was I said, okay, well, I'll take the prescription. And I took the prescription. I can't remember if I filled it. But I didn't give it to her. I did not give her that prescription. And because I grew up in a holistic household, my mother's been a wellness coach for like ever. Yes. And so, I was privy to natural methods, natural things to do. So at that particular time, I went to the health food store and I bought some kava kava and kava kava tea, because that's a natural muscle relaxant. Okay. And I use that to give to her for any pain or anything like that she may have had. So how'd you come to the idea to get her cannabis? Well, my father passed away in June of 2013 or 14. 2013. Okay. And there was so much that I was trying to help do with him from afar, because he was in a different state. Okay. So I happened to be on Facebook, and I came across a opportunity.
Okay.
Now, this opportunity happened to be with cannabis, or yeah, it was with cannabis, and I thought this is interesting.
Okay.
So I got a hold of that opportunity. I joined the opportunity.
Okay, let's be clear, because it sounds like they were soliciting weed dealers on the Facebook.
Right. And that's not their
and you signed up to stand on the corner and serve dime bags. So let's be clear. You don't have to give the name of the opportunity, but
right. Well,
give our audience an idea of what the opportunity was, because we're not promoting that. Okay.
Exactly. So that's not what it was. It was definitely a legal opportunity.
Yes.
I won't say the name of that particular opportunity, but it was a network marketing company or a multi-level marketing company.
Sure.
And the products that they had were CBD. At that particular time, CBD was legal across all 50 states because it's not the psychoactive component of the plant. Right. So I didn't know that at that time. I didn't have that information. I learned all of this through that particular company.
Okay.
So that's when I became, more educated about it, because they were, giving us the education that we needed in order to be able to, it's like, wait, is this weed? Or
so you're going through the product training for this. It's kind of like let's call it like an Avon for CBD products, or Tupperware parties or whatever.
Exactly.
Or you go to people's houses and you put on presentations, or you are selling these products. So you learn about the products. You get it to your daddy.
He had passed away by then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
However, what happened was this: there was a conference that took place, and I didn't go to this conference, but I was able to tune into through tickets. They had a live stream, and they had a few guests that were there. About 3 children, and they were all cancer survivors.
Okay.
Because they had the CBD.
Okay.
Yeah, or the cannabis. So some had straight CBD, some had CBD, THC, and their cancer was in remission. And at that point, my uncle was fighting with I believe leukemia at that time, and then there was a friend of mine who was dealing with a family member with that as well. And I'm just in tears, watching this and listening to their testimonies and seeing how passionate that these mothers were, that they were, they did the chemo and all of this kind of stuff. And then, and they just didn't want to sit back and watch their children be in that much, basically pain and suffering.
Misery.
Yes. And so they were brave enough to say, hey, I'm going to try something else. They did the research. And that's what they chose for their children. And they were sitting there happy, healthy,
alive,
whole, alive, alive and well and living. And I thought, wow. And so as I began to do more research into it, like, well, maybe this can help my daughter. It actually helped my uncle too, as well, because they had given him like 4 days to live, and my aunt knew what I was doing, and she said, "Hey, where do you get this stuff?"
Right.
And so I gave her the information. They got it. They overnighted it. They gave it to him, and he lived another 18 months.
I think it's so important, and the reason why I'm really having you here to come and tell your story, I think it's so important for people to understand that your health and your body belongs to you, and you have to, and in the case of a caregiver and a child, a mother and a child, it is your responsibility to kind of take matters into your own hands and to do your own research and to really find out what's what. And it really just amazes me how people have all kinds of reasons why they won't even consider this, or in a situation like with your aunt and your uncle, now you wait until this man he got 4 days to live. But I'm sure you've at least heard murmurings about this prior to that, but people dismiss it, for so many other reasons, religion and this and that. And it's like, yeah, but this is something that could help.
Yes.
And you won't know how it can help or that it can help unless you seek out the information for yourself and go and God puts you in the places where you need to be to get it, right?
Exactly.
So, obviously, well, let's be clear, you're not still selling hemp products at the Avon parties, but you got the information that you needed.
I got the information that I needed, and I mean,
and you used it to change your life and change your daughter's life.
Exactly.
So let's talk about then once you discovered this and decided, okay, I'm going to do it. You bring it up to the doctors.
Mm-hmm.
Any resistance? Any pushback from her medical team, or?
Well, no, none at all, which is surprising. It's surprising, and I don't know. Maybe it was because it was so. Well, I won't say maybe it was because it was so new. It was because that was meant to be.
Yeah.
Sure. But for the most part, it was fairly new.
Mm-hmm.
The cannabis pilot program was new, and I think she was among that first 2000
sure.
First group
within
or so
that first year or so.
Yes. And so her doctor, we already had the relationship. She had been seeing him for maybe 5 years or so.
Right.
So when I presented it to him, I had the information. I had the education.
So you came equipped.
I came equipped and
yourself.
armed.
So he couldn't say, I don't know nothing about that. I don't,
Exactly.
I don't know. That's not going to be, because you can say, hey, no, this is what it is.
Right. This is what it is. Here's the research, and I'm used to doing that because of course,
are.
Right. That's you
homeschool your kids.
Right. Homeschool my kids.
Let's be clear.
Right. So I have the research.
So clearly you used to reading and looking up stuff and teaching other people what they need to know. Okay.
Right. Right.
So you finally get it for her. How does she consume? Like, is she with the dry flower or the concentrates or the edibles? Like, how are we giving this to her? And how did it, what did you see? What changes did you see as far as her?
Well, she doesn't use, well, I won't say she doesn't use the flower. She doesn't smoke. We use edibles or the oils because that's how she can consume it.
Sure.
And which is really good, and it's good for her because that seems to last a little bit longer. Anywhere between 4 to 6 hours,
right?
Possibly 6.
Right.
So giving her maybe 1 or 2 doses per day.
Sure.
I give it to her in the morning and then give it to her later on at night, possibly before she goes to bed. So it lasts a while for her.
And what kind of edibles?
We use she likes the chocolates.
Okay.
So the chocolates, and it's a bar, and we kind of like split it. You do not want to take a whole bar.
Right. Don't overdo it. You can microdose it. That's very helpful for her.
It. Exactly. So just a little piece of the bar. Maybe she sucks on it under her tongue or something like that. We use the RSO oil.
Okay.
And with that, I kind of make my own because I use essential oils as well.
Sure.
So I'll use the essential oils with the I used to use coconut oil, but now I'm using olive oil.
Okay.
It's biblical. That's all it is.
It's biblical.
It's just biblical.
Okay.
And we'll get into that.
Yes.
That's going to be a great discussion.
Yes, we will.
And the RSO with the essential oils and the
and people don't know RSO, just real quick, because this is kind of like lingo for people that do know. RSO stands for Rick Simpson oil, and it's basically it's like a concentrated form of cannabis oil. So it's basically like the THC and or CBD reduced to its most, I guess you can say, its most potent edible form.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So that's what the RSO is. And you're taking that and you're making different things with it. So tell me, now you say you only have to do that for her maybe once or twice a day. compare that to whatever medication she was on previously, and how often did she have to take a lot more often from one type of medication to the next?
To another. Well, like before, I don't do medications.
Right. Oh.
Well,
so you don't know how they
right. And so
you don't know how.
However, I will say that from the prescription that she had, she would have had to take it about 3 times per day. I do remember that.
Mm-hmm.
She would have had to have 3 doses, and which that was just the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm pretty sure it would have increased over time as opposed to it decreasing.
Right.
The wean.
The wean, right? Because then you build up a tolerance.
Right, you build up a tolerance, and you need more. But then, if you need more, how can I actually wean?
How does it affect her then physically? Because she's taking it, I guess, for muscle spasms and
Yes.
for relaxation. How is it? What does it do for her?
Okay, so with what it does for her is it relaxes her muscles, and so she's not as tight because sometimes she's pulled back, like this.
Sure.
And so I notice, because when I give her a dose, takes about maybe 15 minutes to kick in, 20 minutes. And I just notice her hands go forward.
Okay.
Yeah. And she's there, she's relaxed. And it depends on which strain I give her.
Okay.
Because
that's next on my list. Which strains work best?
Okay. So for her, the strains that works best is a hybrid during the day, and then an indica at night. Notice that for her at night, I always get this mixed up. It's just the serotonin, or I believe the serotonin. The serotonin.
Okay.
It's what helps you sleep.
Yeah.
Regulates
serotonin.
Serotonin. Okay. So her serotonin levels were off.
Okay.
So I give her the indica at night. Will help put her into that deep REM sleep. Gotcha. In which the REM sleep is, of course, where we need to be in order for our bodies to heal and regenerate.
Sure.
So I give her that at night. And then the hybrid, that relaxes her, but it keeps her awake.
Okay, yeah. Yes, because there's the sativa, which is a little bit more energizing, and then the indica, which is more of a relaxing. So what, I want to get this in before we wrap up here. What would you say to someone who is, well, actually 2 questions. What would you say to someone who's considering cannabis as medicine for their child, right? Their child has one of the qualifying conditions, and they a candidate for cannabis. What would you say to them? And then secondly, what are some resources that you might know of that they can use to learn more and educate themselves about it, so they can go into the doctor armed with the information themselves?
Okay, so I'm gonna answer the last question first.
Yeah, I think I asked them in the wrong order.
Right. So the last question first, the resources that you can use to arm yourself when you go to the doctor. Let me think about that website. There's a website that I used at that particular time, and I can't think of it offhand right now, but I would say to just Google.
Yes.
Well, you can when you get on Google, and you can CBD or cannabis for children, or CBD research for children. And even YouTube. YouTube has a ton of information, scientific videos, scientific studies that have been done, where the doctors and the researchers, it's just all there.
Sure. Sanjay Gupta, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, he's actually got a new one out now too. So I think that's on YouTube these days.
Okay, so yes, Sanjay Gupta. There's another. It's a woman. She's a doctor. I forgot her name, but It's over in the UK though.
Okay,
But they've been
right.
doing a lot of research, and she has great information that's there. But that's what it's called, cbdresearch.org.
Mhm.
And at least that's information that you can pull up, you can print it out,
Sure.
and take that information with you. And then also just for inspiration to see other mothers, Canna Moms.
Oh yeah, Canna
The
Moms.
group Canna Moms, they were the ones that I actually saw at that convention with their children,
Right.
the Canna Moms. So there's a group out there called the Canna Moms, and they're just like awesome. They have so much information and things to share.
And that's CANNAMOMS.
Yes. They have a group on Facebook. I believe they have a website as well, but just put that information in, Canna Moms, just to, break that ice of, it's my child.
Yeah.
And, this is marijuana.
And I'm a bad parent.
And I'm a
or
bad
whatever,
parent
yeah.
if I'm giving my children this horrible
This drug.
drug. But prescribing drugs for children that are worse.
I don't want to get off subject, but I always say, you give your kid NyQuil, you don't know what's in NyQuil.
Exactly.
But it make them go to sleep.
Exactly.
And you give it to them, but you've never seen a NyQuil plant, you've never seen an acetaminophen plant, you've never seen an ibuprofen plant.
No.
You don't know what those things
you
are.
haven't.
So.
And these days, children are so intelligent to where they don't want to get in trouble. They don't want to go to jail. And so now they take over-the-counter medications and
get high.
And get high with them.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So now let's wrap up. What would you say to someone, since I asked my questions in the wrong order, what would you say to someone who is considering it for themselves, for their children?
Okay. I would do the research. Do your research. Just anything that you have ever been indoctrinated with, as far as marijuana or cannabis is concerned. That's the correct term, cannabis. Just throw it out the window. I'm asking for Kiana to bring me back on the show again, where we can talk about cannabis. And
oh yeah, that's on my Chiba and the Church show. So
yes.
We definitely gonna bring Nicole back for the Chiba and the Church discussion. Thank you very much for sharing your story with us. I think it's just very important for people to see and hear from people who look like them, sound like them, who may be going through some of the same things. So I really appreciate you sharing your perspective and sharing your story and sharing Sister. Thank you for sharing Sister's videos on Facebook, because it's inspirational to all of us. Like, yes. I'm like, okay, if Sister can do it, I know I can get my attitude together too.
Right.
So thank you, Ms. Nicole.
Okay, and thank you again for having me.
Yes, and once again, thank you to Mr. Abe Villegas of the Illinois Medical Cannabis Patient Community. You've been listening to The Dope Show on IntellectualRadio.com on Mondays at 8 o'clock p.m. We'll talk to you next Monday. Take care.